What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joe Larry. So in this episode, it's going to be a big catch-up on BC sports. I'm going to talk about Northeastern and BC Baseball's Beanpot Championship game from this past week, and then I'll also talk about BC versus Wake Forest. That's this weekend's matchup in the ACC for the Eagles. They'll be playing 3 games against Wake Forest this weekend in Brighton. Then I'll give my Frozen Four preview for tonight, and then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about BC basketball and give some updates on the transfer portal for them. So let's start off with Northeastern Baseball. They won the Baseball Beanpot Championship for the first time since 2013. Very exciting for Mike Levin and the Huskies. It was the same pitching matchup between these two teams from when they previously met in March. We had Michael Gemmer on the mound for the Huskies, and then Evan Moore on the mound for the Eagles. Moore had a scoreless first 3 innings, was looking very good, but then in the 4th inning got hit around a little bit for 2 runs, with one of them being earned. His curveball looked great in this one, which that's been something he's been great with this year, is his breaking ball. He had 8 strikeouts on the day in this matchup. I've been impressed with his 2 strike counts. And that's obviously a time for him to go to the curveball and try to get that strike 3. And he's been very accurate in the innings I've seen from him. Overall in that game, he went 4 total innings, 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, 2 hits, 2 runs, with one of them being earned. Overall, at the end of the day, did give BC a chance to win the game, but they just could not hit. As for Gemma, he was lights out with only 1 hit allowed in 4 innings. Also had 4 strikeouts and 2 walks. The only hit he allowed was the only hit that BC got for the entire game. Vince Amini had the only hit for the Eagles. So I do think Evan Moore did give the Eagles a chance to win this game, but when you score 0 runs, you only have 1 hit, you're not going to win many games, if any. Very rarely you're going to win a game with just 1 hit. Following Gemma, the Huskies had 5 shutout innings and 9 strikeouts to 1 walk. So very impressive pitching there from their bullpen. 5 shutout innings from the bullpen, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk, 0 hits allowed from the relievers for the Northeastern Huskies. Very impressive run there from them. BC did strike out the Huskies 18 times in this game, but offense was the issue for the Eagles. The Huskies did have 3 hits out of Tyler McGregor. He was 3 for 5 in the game with an RBI and a run scored. He also had a double, triple, and a single. He was only a home run short of the cycle. He's had a very good second season for the Huskies since transferring in. Was very good last summer for the Falmouth Commodores in the Cape Cod Baseball League, and decided to come back for a graduate year at Northeastern, and he's looked very good in the lineup next to Alex Lane. As for Northeastern, this sports program has really started to take off and really gain more respect in the Beanpot. In the hockey Beanpot, Northeastern's won 5 of the last 6 championships. In the men's Beanpot, and then in the women's Beanpot, they won back-to-back years. So Northeastern women's and men's hockey are starting to get more respect in the Beanpot, and now they just won the baseball one. So obviously things are starting to flip here for the Huskies. They're starting to gain more respect in the baseball and men's and women's Beanpot, and hopefully at the end of the day, things continue to trend upwards for this program. I think when you win just that first one and you break the streak, like we saw with Northeastern breaking the streak with Adam Gaudette, Dylan Sakura, and Nolan Stevens back in 2018, that started a stretch for the Northeastern Huskies. And at the end of the day, just breaking that streak after not winning, I think it was since 1988, just winning one of those men's Beanpot titles started an entire trend where Northeastern's won 5 of the last 6. So hopefully this happens for Northeastern baseball as well. As for BC baseball, they have a tough weekend series coming up against Wake Forest. Wake Forest has won 5 games in a row heading into this weekend. They started the year 11-1, but then had a little bit of cold stretch in the middle of the season, losing 2 of 3 to Duke and 2 of 3 to UVA. They were also swept by UNC at one point as well. They did just sweep a very good ACC team at Virginia Tech last weekend, though, so they're starting to turn things up as of late. They were a top 6 team heading into the year. Now they're at number 14 in the country, but still a very good ranking. This will yet again be another week in a row where BC is playing a number 14 team in the country. Last week, obviously, facing a very good Florida State team. And then this weekend will be Wake Forest. I will be on the mic calling the game for WZBC's YouTube page at 3 p.m. on Friday. So if you have the time and want to tune in, it's much appreciated. No worries if not. But BC playing those 2 teams over the last 2 weeks, definitely a tough stretch, but just shows how good the ACC is in baseball. Team captain for the Wake Forest baseball team is Nick Kurtz. He's been on a heater as of late. A top draft pick definitely in the 2024 MLB draft. 13 home runs on the year, 31 runs batted in, an .807 slugging percentage, a .318 batting average, a .1319 OPS with 19 strikeouts to 35 walks. 16 more times he's walked than struck out this season, which is really, really impressive. He also has a home run in 6 straight games heading into this weekend. He's 13 of 23 over those last 6 games with 10 home runs, 19 runs batted in, including 5 home runs and 12 runs batted in his last 2 games. So BC has to be very careful with them. If there are guys on base and there's a base free, I'd potentially maybe walk him in certain situations. I wouldn't want to face him and give him a chance to hit another home run. We'll see what the Eagles decide to do with him. I'd probably try to pitch everything low and away to make sure he can't turn on anything, especially if you throw it inside. That's where he wants it. So just make sure he can't turn on anything like we've seen over the last couple weeks. The Demon Deacons ace is Chase Burns. He'll probably be on the mound on Friday. 3.37 ERA with just a .91 whip on the season. 97 strikeouts and 50 2/3 innings pitched. Yet again, another great strikeout guy in the ACC. Seeing Jamie Arnold last week for Florida State was really cool. And yet again, this is another great pitcher here in the ACC in Chase Burns. He has a 175 batting average against this season, which is very impressive. As for BC, they lost 2 of 3 last weekend to a very good Florida State team. BC did have a nice walk-off win on Saturday, which was very exciting, and it definitely helped BC in their RPI rankings. Now this gives them a chance at maybe an at-large bid for next month's NCAA tournament. Winning one of these games this weekend against Wake Forest would be huge as well. I did call the game last Friday, in which BC did lose that one 11-4. Jamie Arnold was on the mound for Florida State. Gave up 2 earned runs, despite only having 3 earned runs on the year before last weekend, if I remember right. He had 2 earned runs in that game last Friday. Very impressive for BC to get some runs against him, but at the end of the day, it still was not enough for the Eagles to win that game. Credit to Cam Leary, though. He had a 3-run home run off of Arnold, which is really cool to see. I will be posting that call from that home run on my Instagram for my podcast at some point soon, so you'll hear that call if you didn't get to tune in and hear it. Jamie Arnold, though, still finished the game, 7 innings pitched, 3 runs, with 2 of those being earned, 5 hits, 9 strikeouts, and 1 walk. He is now 6-1 on the year. What I was most impressed with him is that 80% of his batters, I would say, started with an 0-2 count. 80% of them, I would say, it was 0-2. And that definitely gave him all the command and control to throw whatever he wanted to in that 0-2 count. It definitely was a big break for him. He looked very, very good in that game. And I think when you have an 0-2 count, it's a huge break for the pitcher because you know you can throw the fastball, maybe have them thinking a breaking ball's coming, you throw the fastball, or you can give them a curveball in the dirt and not even worry about it since it's an 0-2 count. And you obviously have pitches to waste there. So that's definitely an advantage there for the pitcher. And Arnold looked great last week against BC. Very cool to see a potential first-round pick pitching last week in Brighton. I'd imagine he's going to be a first-round pick. One of the best pitchers in college baseball this year and still has an ERA around 1. On Saturday, BC won their game against Florida State 7-6 in 11 innings, which was awesome to see. John West was very strong as a starter for the Eagles in this one. 7 innings pitched, 8 hits allowed, 4 earned runs, a walk, 6 strikeouts, and 2 hit batsmen. BC did have a walk-off home run from Cam Leary, now second all-time in home runs in BC's program history. That's an electric win for Todd Interdonato in BC, especially in such a big weekend for the Red Bandana games. Really cool to see them get a win. BC is now in a very long 9-game homestand. They did beat Dartmouth yesterday. Some great pitching from Brian McMonagle and Brad Lombardi. Got the Eagles a 7-1 win yesterday. After this weekend versus Wake Forest, BC will play Notre Dame next weekend at Notre Dame, and then they have 10 more home games in a row. So they're in a 9-game homestand right now. Then they'll play 3 games at Notre Dame next weekend, and then come home to play 10 more home games. So very favorable schedule here for the Eagles. Grabbing 1 win over Florida State was huge. Like I said, I thought they could win a game before the series began. Winning 1 game is definitely huge for the RPI rankings. The same thing goes versus Wake Forest. If BC can find a way to grab just 1 win there, that would definitely give them a better chance at an at-large bid next month in the NCAA tournament. So I'm hoping they can do so, and I do believe the Eagles can get 1 win in the series. As for the Frozen Four, which begins tonight, we have BU versus Denver at 5 p.m. on ESPN2. BU blew out Minnesota 6-3 in the Sioux Falls Regionals final game. That was a very tough game for Minnesota. BU was trailing at 1 point, 2-0. Things were looking up for the Gophers. And then BU responded with 6 of the next 7 goals in the game, including 2 in the third period to put the game out of reach. BU just stayed calm, cool, and collected when they were down. They just didn't fret at all. They weren't nervous being down 2 goals early on. They beat Minnesota with patience. They were confident the whole game, even being down 2-0. And obviously a game where you score 6 goals and win the game 6-3, you'd expect Macklin Celebrini to have a couple goals. Celebrini didn't even score in this one. He didn't have a goal in this game. And BU still dominated the Gophers 6-3. He did pick up 2 assists, though. He's definitely got to watch out for tonight for Denver. He's been terrific all year and definitely going to be the first overall pick in this year's NHL draft. Going to see if he's going to win the Hobie Baker, which is going to be announced this weekend. I think Cutter Gauthier definitely has a chance, but I do think Celebrini probably gets the edge over him, especially considering Celebrini did win the Hockey East Player of the Year award. As for Denver, they escaped with a 2-1 win over Cornell. They've won 2 one-goal games now in the tournament, which shows they can win those gritty games that they have to grind out. But they are playing with fire. They need to be better. They don't want to be in another one-goal game tonight. They did beat UMass in the first game of the tournament, winning that one 2-1 in double overtime in the first game of the Springfield Regional. They got a goal from Tristan Braz in double overtime. Big win there for Denver. 46 saves from Matt Davis in that one. He was great in net. He was the goalie that actually won with them in 2022. So they still have some pieces coming back from that team. Sean Barron's a great defenseman. He's still there. And obviously having Davis in net is huge considering they do have some veteran pieces that are experienced. That definitely could be an edge for them tonight considering BU is a very young team and Denver does have a lot of experience. Maybe that could play to Denver's advantage, but BU hasn't let that hurt them all year being a young team. The same goes for BC, two of the youngest teams in college hockey. They've been great all year long. This will definitely be a great game to watch, though. I had Denver making it to the finals in my predictions, so I'm going to stay with them winning this game. I think it's going to be a very close 4-3 game, in my opinion. An issue for Denver is this, though. They scored 4.6 goals per game on the season, which is number one in the nation, but they only have 4 goals in the entire tournament in 2 games. So they need to play more aggressively in offense. They need to have at least 3 goals in this game if they want to win. As for BU, they need to start this game on a better note. They can't go down 2-0 like they did to Minnesota. Since Denver's too good to be trailing by multiple goals to, Denver's not going to give up a 2-0 lead, I'd imagine. So BU does have to start this game on a better note if they want to win. I'm going to roll with Denver still winning this one, though, as I said, in a 4-3 game over BU. Then we have BC versus Michigan at 8:30 p.m. on ESPN2. Make sure to tune in to 90.3 FM to hear the WZBC guys call that game. Brendan Mahoney and Jacob Laster both made the trip to St. Paul, Minnesota for this game, so definitely tune in to hear their broadcast of it. As for BC, they've won 19 of their last 20 games. Their only loss over that stretch was to BU in the Beanpot semifinal game. BC won a lot of those games by multiple goals. It seemed like they won by 2 or 3 goals every single one of those games, even though there were a couple close ones in there. But they did barely escape against a very good team in Quinnipiac in the Providence Regional Final. BC barely escaped. They won that game 5-4 in overtime. Jack Malone with the game-winning goal. But BC tied it up with under 5 minutes to go in regulation. Quinnipiac, if they decide to play a little bit less conservatively and still were trying to score in that third period rather than just wasting time, maybe they could have ended up winning that game. It just came back to bite them playing that conservatively, and obviously BC ties the game up with an Aaron Minetti in goal with 5 minutes to go, and then obviously the game-winning goal from Jack Malone in overtime. BC did find a way to win that one, but they were trailing just about the entire game, it seemed like. It was either tied or they were trailing for the entire game until that game-winning goal from Jack Malone. But BC hasn't played a crisp game of hockey for 60 minutes in the tournament yet. Michigan Tech was close for 2 periods, and then Quinnipiac was either leading or tied for the entire game besides the overtime game-winning goal from Malone. So BC needs to find a way to be better tonight, and obviously they need to limit penalties. I think they've had a major penalty in 3 straight games. Definitely in the last 2, for sure. Definitely against Michigan Tech, and definitely against Quinnipiac. They need to find a way to limit those penalties. The freshmen have been rung up for many penalties in the tournament, seems like. Drew Fortescue, Will Smith, Gabe Perreault. All of them have received time in the box. BC can't have that tonight, though, especially against a very good Michigan team who you don't want to give power play opportunities to. They have a 34.5% power play unit, which is number 1 in the country. BC's actually at number 2 at 30%. BC's penalty kill is very good, 88.6%, number 1 in the country, which special teams have been huge for BC all year, so credit to Greg Brown. He's been getting the most out of those guys on the PK and obviously the power play. But BC does need to be better tonight with penalties. You don't want to give Michigan more than 2 power play opportunities. If you give them 3 or more, that could be trouble for BC. BC does have the number 1 goal scorer in the country in Cutter Gauthier, 37 goals. He's the first 35-goal scorer in college hockey since 2016. He's averaging 1.64 points per game, which is number 4 in the country. BC does have a lot of guys in that top 5 in points per game. Michigan's goalie, Jake Barcheski, 2.81 goals against with a .909 save percentage on the year. So BC can't beat him. You can't score on him. Michigan has high NHL draft picks, and Gavin Brindley, he was a second rounder to Colorado. Frank Neza, 13th overall pick in 2022 to Chicago. And then Rutger McRory, 14th overall pick to Winnipeg in 2022. Neza on the year, 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. Brindley, 25 goals, 28 assists, 53 points. And then obviously, those 2 guys are great, but they also have a great leader as well in junior forward Dylan Duke, who has 26 goals, 23 assists, and 49 points on the year. He's another guy BC has to game plan for tonight. This game's going to come down to mistakes. Whichever team has more power play opportunities probably wins this game, I would say. I'm going to give BC a 3-2 edge. I do trust Jacob Fowler in net more than I do trust Jake Barcheski, but at the end of the day, anybody can win this game, considering it's a one-and-done situation. Either goalie is capable of having a hot game. I'm going to go with Jacob Fowler getting the win here, though, 3-2. Impressive to see Michigan win the national championship in football this year and also have a chance at doing so in college hockey. That is very cool for the program, but obviously I am rooting for BC tonight. Hopefully they can find a way to win this one, but it will be a close game. As I said, Michigan has found a way to win games all year. A very good team, a lot of power play opportunities that they've taken advantage of. If you look at that game last week versus Michigan State in the St. Louis Regional Final, they won that game 5-2. 5-2. They were trailing at one point 1-0. After a Gavin O'Connell power play goal for Michigan State. But after that, they scored 5 of the next 6 goals of the game to win 5-2 over a very good Michigan State team, who I thought was a little bit overrated. But at the end of the day, when I watched them play, they were a good team. I could see why they were ranked so high. And at one point in the game, it was 2-2. But then after that, in the third period, Michigan scored 3 goals to end the game with a 5-2 win. They scored 3 goals in the last 8 minutes of regulation, winning that game 5-2. It's going to be pretty cool to see Marshall Warren tonight playing against BC. 4-year player at BC, was a captain last year for the Eagles, but transferred to Michigan for his graduate year. It's going to be pretty cool to see him go up against the Eagles. Hopefully BC can find a way to win tonight. As I said, I'm going to roll with the Eagles winning this one 3-2, but I think it's going to be a very close and tough game here for either team. I think it's going to be a very close game and a physical game as well. It's going to come down to mistakes. I think BC ends up getting the edge here. So to close out the episode, we're going to talk about BC men's basketball team. They had a great run to the NIT tournament, did end up losing to UNLV, but a very cool chance for them to play in playoff basketball. That was the first time BC's played in the playoffs in 6 seasons, so very important for them to take a step up this season. I know the NIT tournament isn't that crazy. It's not like making March Madness, but at the end of the day, it still is important for BC to take a step up. They were struggling to even make the NIT for the last 5 years heading into this year, so making the NIT tournament for the first time in 6 years is important for this team. As I said during the season, this year, they were expected to take a step up, and then at some point this season, maybe midway through, they were still making the same mistakes they were making over the last few years, but they found a way to turn things up at the end of the season, made a little bit of a run in the ACC tournament, which was really cool to see, and obviously making the NIT tournament, as I said, is an accomplishment considering the Eagles were struggling to do so over the last 5 years. They are losing a lot of talent, though, heading into next year. Quinton Post is going to go to the professionals, whether it be the NBA or Europe. I do think he has a chance at maybe being a late second-round pick in the NBA. To make the NBA nowadays as a big man, you've got to be able to move your feet and cover the perimeter. You have to cover a guy like Joel Embiid in the paint, but also cover a guy like Joel Embiid at the three-point line since he can shoot. You need to be able to cover the three and the paint in order to be a big man in today's game. We'll see how the NBA scouts grade him in this year's draft. Jaden Zachary's also leaving. He entered the portal alongside Prince Aligbe, Mason Madsen, and Claudio Harris Jr. All 4 of those players have entered the portal. With Post being gone, now BC has lost 4 of their top 5 scorers from this season. 4 major pieces from this year's team. BC is going to be losing to the portal. Zachary, Aligbe, Madsen, and Harris. Like I said, there's a lot of work to do in the portal for Earl Grant, but I do have faith in him. I think he's a great coach and a great guy as well. And definitely an easy guy to root for. I know players would want to play for him. And he knows how to build a program that's built on sustained success. And that's very important in college basketball and college sports today. We saw him do it at Charleston, a program that was great year in and year out, and they're still even good now. He built that foundation for that program, and I think he's going to do special things here for BC. I know they're losing a lot of guys. Aligbe was a guy that a lot of people had high expectations for heading into the season, but he just never completely lived up to them, in my opinion. As for Zachary, he's a loss as well on offense, but it makes sense for him to get some new looks on him with another year or 2 left of eligibility. As for Claudio Harris, that's definitely a tough loss, especially on offense. He can get very hot from 3 and carry a game on offense. But honestly, this is just the way of college sports nowadays. Nobody stays at a program for 4 years. You're not going to see a guy stay 4 years like we saw Bolden Brace stay at Northeastern or Mike Sirota stay 3 years at Northeastern. There's not really much loyalty in college sports nowadays. And at the end of the day, I understand it. People want to go and get better looks on themselves, maybe get a new opportunity at a new program. I understand all of that, but you don't really see players stay at the same school for 3 or 4 years anymore. That's just not the case, and that's just not the way college sports are nowadays. So I'm not really too shocked to see these guys enter the portal. BC's best returning player, I would say, is Devin McLaughlin, best returning scorer. I think he's going to take a step up next year as well, considering they're losing a lot of pieces. They're going to need somebody to take a step up. I think McLaughlin can be that guy. As for one other guy that entered the portal, Armani Mighty, backup big man for BC, entered the portal as well. So now BC just has 6 returning players heading into the season. So they do have a lot of work to do in the portal, but like I said, I do believe in Earl Grant. I do think he can do something special with this program. Anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, we appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.